It's time to face up to reality in this country. Our political leaders have drastically misled us, and the National Cabinet has been an abject failure. We were told a year ago, more than a year ago, in fact, that we would ensure the coronavirus pandemic didn't overwhelm our medical system. We were told we needed to lock down early to slow its spread, allow time to build up medical capacity, and ensure we could flatten the curve. Now, more than a year on, we've been seen to panic. We are paranoid. We have paranoid political opportunists adopting an unofficial elimination strategy. While the rest of the world, including many countries where the pandemic took a horrible toll, the rest of the world is learning to live with a virus that undoubtedly will be with us for years to come. Australia is pretending we can eliminate the virus. There were fewer than 30 cases today in a country of 25 million people. Just repeat that. Just think about that. Fewer than 30 new cases in a country of 25 million people. We had about one new infection today for every million people in the country. Yet our largest city is locked down. Darwin is locked down. Restrictions are being imposed across the country and state borders are closed. This is just nuts. Take a step back. The media and politicians obsess over the number count. But if we take a step back, we can see that this is over the top. This is paranoid. There's one person in this country in a critical care bed from COVID, and the nation is gripped in fear, in restrictions, in rules, in this overreaction. People can die from the flu, from heart disease, from car crashes, from cancer, from blood clots and random infections, and they do, of course, every day. But for COVID infections, with thankfully no deaths at all in this country this year, we create this turmoil. It's irrational on many levels. And the main reason it's irrational is because the virus will exist for many years and we must learn to deal with it. So we're just delaying the inevitable. Now, virtually all of the vulnerable in this country have already had the first vaccination shot if they want it. That means that even if the virus ran amok in this nation right now, it would do nothing like the damage we've seen in Europe or North America, much less India or Brazil. Yet these are the examples people put up. We need to carefully assess what we can bear and manage in this country. Most news reports fail to tell you how many people are actually sick because the low numbers are good news. They prefer to frighten you with the numbers of infections. Now, you could argue we might need to be very careful until, say, after winter. Or you might argue we need to wait until all the vulnerable get their second vaccination shot. But there's no doubt we're fast approaching a time when we need to say goodbye to lockdowns and pledge never to shut state borders and stop killing off businesses and creating hardship for people. Some premiers are saying this can't happen until almost everyone is vaccinated. But the virus is asymptomatic or mild for the vast majority of people outside the elderly and the vulnerable. We must be closer than that to saying we can handle this in a managed and open way, but instead we're going backwards. This is what's happening again in Sydney on the weekend. Police moving people on. You're not allowed outdoors unless you're exercising. We saw this sort of authoritarian dystopia more than a year ago. Now it's back. I can hardly believe my eyes. The New South Wales Police Commissioner has talked about his officers handing out fines, and some of what's been going on borders on the comical.
Unbelievably, we saw two men sunbaking naked on a beach on the south coast. They were startled by a deer, ran into the National Park and got lost. Not only did they require assistance from SES and police to rescue them, they also both received a ticket for $1,000. Now, it's only a small percentage of the New South Wales people that are not following the health guidelines, but I can assure you, if you breach the health orders or the guidelines, you will be punished.
Bizarre stuff, but be warned, the policing will continue, and the Premier is warning people in New South Wales not to share or heed dissenting views.
And please know that I appreciate during these difficult times, everybody has an opinion. There are a lot of experts out there giving their opinion on what may or may not be the case. please know that what has served New South Wales very well is that we've relied on the health expert advice of Dr. Chant and her team, and that is a source of truth we want everyone to really take advice from.
Oh dear, Gladys Berejiklian has been our last holdout for common sense. She's resisted lockdowns and alarmist rhetoric far longer than most. But tragically, over the weekend, she caved into the political and media hysteria. And as I said, our largest city is in lockdown. Didn't I pick a good time to be away from home? But I want to tell you how silly this is getting. Daniel Andrews, the Victorian Premier, has had his first day back on the job in Melbourne today. And this is what he said.
And we wish our colleagues in New South Wales all the best, and we're there to help. If there's anything we can do, we're more than happy to do that.
Really? That's irony at its best, isn't it? I'm sure Gladys was on the blower in a flash. But get this, I come to you live tonight from South Australia, where despite zero COVID-19 cases, all of its mainland borders closed. You might be able to understand that if they want to protect themselves. There are long queues in Adelaide to get tested for COVID, but the Liberal government here, Stephen Marshall's Liberal government, has imposed new restrictions, including compulsory mask wearing and halving the capacity of hospitality venues, crushing businesses, keeping families apart, slamming the door on casual workers, and they've done this for 0 cases. Listen to the language of the South Australian Chief Health Officer yesterday.
This one is passing like wildfire, and so at the moment we would say our community is a bit of a tinderbox, and we are very concerned if we get undetected cases it will take off very rapidly.
So she's gone from an imaginary pizza box transmission last year to a tinderbox this year. 0 cases and restrictions come in anyway. How do we deal with this rationally when this is the level we've reached? This brings me to National Cabinet. It'll be meeting in the next half hour or so. And this is the biggest test for Scott Morrison. Can he demand some sense? Can he get the country back to flattening the curve? Can he outline a path out of this madness, a plan to live openly with the virus in our midst? Because that's the only end game. Morrison needs to take charge here. He should enunciate a plan out and demand that the states sign up in a nationally coordinated way. Otherwise, what's the point of National Cabinet? Sadly, I don't hold out much hope. Morrison faces an election within 6 to 10 months, and we live in a crazy period where each COVID infection seems to be counted as a political failure. That's the main problem. Even political opposition parties are reluctant to criticise any anti-COVID measure because they'd rather capitalise on the fear of infections. Infections by a virus should not be seen as political failure. Illness is a fact of life. We need to manage health threats in a proportionate way. It's a simple truism to say we can't keep doing this to ourselves. The $64 billion question is how long we're going to keep trying. Until then, in this country, we're prisoners of our own paranoia.